Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Bloodbound696 and today we're going to look at some updating technical analysis on what happened on the daily today on Bitcoin. This is still going to be partaking to the diamond that I mentioned in the previous videos, but we're just going to get right into it. So basically we got a little bit of some downward selling pressure activity on the daily. I was a little bit confused on what this was when it started accumulating the way it did. um, no surprise. Uh, it started looking like a diamond. And these different triangles were drawn on different time frames. So, of course, none of them stick perfectly per se. They don't look like they're supposed to be there, but they've been drawn everywhere from the 4 hour to the 3 hour, looking at where accumulations were coming from, where certain price action was respected or disrespected per se, just to get a perspective on that and kind of what happened. We had a lot of different kind of micro patterns here that played out, and one of the biggest things I think is essentially on the daily, what I think was a diamond essentially fulfilling, right? I think the reason I thought so is not only because of the triangular squeeze that we had on the right, but kind of this broadening wedge that we had on the left here. And of course, there's this kind of green triangle that's in the way. I could delete that if I really wanted to, including the um, this descending triangle here, but it's kind of important here for kind of what was holding it together at the moment a couple of hours ago, right? Because we're like, okay, well, it could recover, like a little bullish, whatever, but that didn't happen. Um, that didn't happen. So one of the things that I wanted to check out here was a measurement of what could this have been, right? Because we have resistance about here. The volume well is about here. It's about a how much is it? It's about a $4,000 move, right? And if we check the distance that it did on the daily, just make this a little easier on everybody here. If we check the distance on the daily and we see how the candles close, if this is the apex, this is it's got a little bit ways to go. It's basically done, to be honest with you, right? It's got a little bit more, but this is not like if you miss this, it is what it is. I missed it. I'm about to get in a short order very soon, and I'll explain why. I'm actually happy that this is a diamond because diamonds are continuation patterns, right? And there's a bigger diamond at hand that is a $14,000, almost $15,000 move to the up, to the downside. And right now, this has pulled down to the downside. If this were to fulfill the closes on this, which is roughly up here, and obviously this is stretched because we had, right, it's like we have this like resistance over here. If it were to fulfill double, essentially this whole leg, that's about a 7,000, almost $800 move. So imagine if it would do that, we would be going a lot lower, a lot lower. Um, and it's kind of interesting that it's roughly about the same numbers, and here's where our supports are. But I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that may happen for a different reason. But I think for the most part, I want to say that 78%, this diamond is pretty much complete this fall. And there was a lot of invisible structures that I only found out existed after it fell. I knew when we fell, we were like, okay, well, we're in a descending triangle. I mean, we were in it, but I'm like, it could go lower and then just pull up, right? Um, Maybe it would have done like a little retest of this general area here. It didn't. In fact, it broke and continued even lower, right? And to me, that's important because by the time it closed, right, assuming that there's more to this diamond, and I'm not saying it's going to be perfect to the dollar or anything like that. Plus, we have all kinds of, micro supports. I mean, we could get like a small bounce here or something, going back to structure, break again, who knows? But my thing is that If this diamond is a general continuation of what the trend is, because this is what's important, right? It's not just, okay, the local trend is what this diamond just pulled off, right? It's basically done, pretty much. What I'm saying is, if this is continuing the trend, right, um, this could go a lot lower, like a lot lower. I think if I draw here on the daily, just where I have some ideas what we're dealing with here based off some of these closes. Let me just stretch this out a little bit more until it's aligned enough. Something along these lines. This is very thin. Okay, this is something I drew on the fly, barely any consideration. Um, but my biggest thing are these other big triangles that we have here, which are drawn on the weekly. I believe they're not drawn on the daily, which is why they look off, right? Um, but if we got rid of this because we already have enough what people would consider as clutter, um, this broke, right? So if my TD sequential starts building support, because you know on the weekly we're at an 8, it did not turn into a red one yet. It could turn into a red one. It could fail, quote unquote, right, and turn into a red one and continue lower. Usually, when the TD sequential turns into a 9, which would be technically in 4 days if it continues to do that, by then you would get like a blue dot somewhere under or really close, depending on where the TD sequential thinks good supports are. And what tends to happen is that if you close above or below, and it would be these blue dots that you see here, above or below, they would mean continuation. I don't know if we're going to get the chance on the weekly um, to get that opportunity to see that, right? Kind of like we saw here, right? This fell down, closed under, it continued lower. It's basically kind of how it works. Is it 100%? I mean, this is a huge distance. This was like an easy quote unquote short. Now, if it closed right here, I wait a couple of candles, right? But like if you look on the 4 hour, there's other supports. Like it's a whole different universe, right? I mean, everything is different on the different time frames, right? Everything affects everything from the micro to the macro, but you gotta have to chase it a little bit, right? Um, but seeing how this broke down and looking at how where the structures are going to be trapped in for the time being, if this results in a tiny little bounce, I mean, this could just be like some dead cat bounce for like 2 3 days and continue lower. And for me, that'd be great in terms of confirmation. These are the two triangles that I had added here. They crossed a little bit, but there were two options that I took on. I believe on the weekly. And see, we fell through this little pocket here that I think I had mentioned in the other videos. Um, and basically, this diamond at this point is like, this is out of structure, right? We have 3 days and 20 hours before this week closes. I think we could have one day where it's like green or whatever, but maybe it's like a doji or something, kind of trapped in between whatever, kind of just rides along for 2 seconds. Um, but if this candle closes, I would be very, very, very bearish. Um, I think. Now, the move that I mentioned was about $14,800. This already, based off more or less where the apex would be of the diamond, is already a, yeah, well, more than $4,000. So essentially, what we have left is about $9,500 worth of value. What I would do, and I recommended this, I think at some point, I think I recommended it to people IRL and not in these videos, is if you don't have a lot of money and you're thinking of shorting this with the confidence and signals and whatever it is that, let's just say 100% it was going to short, right? I would not be Bitcoin. I would probably go in an alt. I do want to mention though that just because Bitcoin does something doesn't mean another coin will. It's not 100%. It's very important, but history shows kind of thing. Um, a little bit that Bitcoin likes to bleed out a lot of the alts. What I would do is get something cheap in your range. Like for example, if you have more than $30,000, sure, get in a Bitcoin, I guess, low risk thing. If you have less, probably get into Litecoin. If you have even less money, probably get into Tron and short that, right? It's still important to do your TA, right? To do your due diligence on the structures of those coins, right? And see where the breaking points are for them. But you kind of know just where the weak spots are, because if this starts going down, um, every week is going to be red. And it's funny. I had mentioned hidden bullish divergence, and it seems like this whole New Year's thing that I mentioned so far it looks like it's manifesting. And I talked to somebody and I was like, this, I guess this thing won over technical analysis, because you could have all the technical, and I think I mentioned this in another video too, you could have all the technicals you want, but if a bunch of people with a lot of money, right? Or a little bit of people with a lot of money, or just billions of people with very little money, pack up and agree and make the same kind of trade, it's going to move the market that particular direction, right? So this was kind of a sit and watch scenario at this point. And when it seems like that if it's gonna continue lower and not recover at all, which is slightly early, but this diamond on the daily is kind of like a precursor of what could come to the downside. Um, yeah, it did not give a single bleep about that hidden monthly bullish divergence. While the market was slow, the market wants to they want to push it down. They're going to push it down. That doesn't mean I'm never going to trust the RSI again or anything. I, for example, it's just complaining about some other asset. I was like, oh shoot, I didn't see that divergence. I should have gone in and da 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 da, or whatever. Some other asset, right? In this case, this whole like New Year's thing, um, I think it could fulfill itself completely. And something I did want to point out is the weekly looks worse, right? We had a chance to recover. I think that chance is kind of gone. The weekly, like I mentioned, I think even in text I said it looks kind of sus. It wasn't like horrendous, but it was like borderline. And now it's just like I can't defend the TTM. Like it looks pretty bearish. It looks pretty bearish. The fact that that diamond is usually a continuation pattern and shot down the way it did with the speed that it did, taking us out of structure, which would be confirmed in 3 days and 20 hours. I'm kind of even afraid, like if I was a shorter, right, if I was bearish on this, I wouldn't even wait the 3 days. Like, I'm going to put in an order tomorrow, um, and I'm forced to wait and see. That's not a bad thing. If it does continue lower, like for example, if this loses um, support at 43,000 ish, uh, yeah, not even that. I mean, basically, if we close lower than kind of where we are now, um, I mean, I could easily see us hitting 38,605 in absolute no time, and maybe wick slightly lower, like another $2,000. So right now, this is looking pretty bearish. So, um, like I said, the move was going to start to pick up, and what a blessing that a diamond had formed on the daily. to get things rolling. So yeah, if this closes the way it does, be very weary of dead cat bounces, as they say, those terms, um, and bull traps, if you will, because more or less this is the internal patterns of how this is going to bounce around lower, right? And if we look at the previous structure, I'm not saying it's going to be kind of perfect like this slight angle. It could be just straight down due to the like absolute agreement of the market. Um, but yeah, this doesn't look too hot. Anyone who is bullish, I don't know. I don't know, Chief. This doesn't look too good. So if you're a shorter or you've been shorting, I know you're probably very happy right now. um, but yeah, I would wait just a little bit, see what are the structures that are forming roughly on the 3 hour and 4 hour. But so far, this is looking like a short more than a rebound. So yeah, that'll be all. My name has been Bloodbot 696. Thank you very much.